What is the scariest feeling in the world? Many would say it's failure. The fear of losing your job, running out of money, or watching your dreams collapse. But there is a fear that is much darker, much more sinister, and it only haunts those who actually win. It is the fear of reaching the top of the mountain you spent your entire life climbing, looking around, and feeling absolutely nothing. To the outside world, Mark was the definition of the American dream. At 32, he was a senior partner at a prestigious architectural firm in Manhattan. He owned a minimalist, sun-drenched loft in Brooklyn. He drove a luxury electric car, ran marathons on weekends, and wore tailored suits that exuded quiet confidence. If you scrolled through his social media, or read his resume, you would think he had solved the equation of life. But on a rainy Tuesday evening, at 9:45 p.m., Mark was sitting at his pristine executive desk on the 42nd floor. The office was empty. The city below was a glittering sea of electric stars. He had just finalized a $10 million contract that he had chased for 6 brutal months. His phone lit up with a text from his CEO, "Brilliant work, Mark. You did it. Let's celebrate tomorrow." Mark stared at the message. He waited for the rush of adrenaline. He waited for the pride, the joy, the relief. But there was only a vast, echoing silence inside his chest. His heart wasn't beating faster. His mind didn't feel victorious. Instead, a cold, heavy realization settled into his stomach. He had achieved everything he ever wanted. And it meant nothing. Tonight, we are entering the hidden, quiet world of high-functioning anxiety and the ambition trap. We are going to deconstruct why the modern culture of hyperproductivity creates successful ghosts, people who are masters of execution but completely disconnected from their own souls. If you have ever felt like your achievements are just a shield to hide an inner emptiness, Mark's story is your story. To understand how Mark became a successful ghost, we have to look at how his psychological machinery was built. In modern society, we have a name for people like Mark. We call them high achievers. We praise them, we give them promotions, we hold them up as examples of discipline. But in the therapist's office, this behavior often has a different name: high-functioning anxiety. Unlike traditional anxiety, which can paralyze a person and keep them in bed, high-functioning anxiety does the opposite. It drives you forward. It forces you to wake up at 5 a.m., to check your emails at midnight, to obsess over every detail, and to never, ever stop moving. For Mark, work wasn't just a way to earn a living. It was his oxygen. More importantly, it was his defense mechanism. From a young age, Mark learned that his value as a human being was tied strictly to his performance. He was the son of immigrants who sacrificed everything to give him a future. The unspoken rule in his household was clear: we suffered so you could succeed. Failure is not an option. When Mark got an A, he was celebrated. When he got a B, the silence in the house was deafening. Slowly, his young mind integrated a toxic core belief: I am not loved for who I am. I am only loved for what I produce. This is the birth of the ambition trap. When your self-worth is entirely performance-based, you can never allow yourself to rest. Because the moment you stop producing, the anxiety catches up to you. Rest feels like laziness. Stillness feels like death. You become a shark that has to keep swimming just to stay alive. Mark carried this programming into adulthood. He became a machine. He wore his 80-hour work weeks like a badge of honor. When his friends complained about stress, Mark secretly felt superior. He mistook his anxiety for ambition. He thought that because he was moving fast, he was moving toward happiness. He didn't realize that he wasn't running toward success, he was running away from himself. But the human body and mind are not biological computers. They cannot run on maximum capacity forever without a cost. And the cost of chronic, unexamined anxiety is emotional numbness. For the past 3 years, Mark had been experiencing a psychological phenomenon known as anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure from activities that usually bring joy. He would go to expensive restaurants with his friends, but the food tasted like cardboard. He would buy rare vinyl records, but the music sounded like background noise. He even tried dating, but when he looked into the eyes of beautiful, intelligent women, he felt no spark, no curiosity. He felt like an actor reading lines from a script. To survive this internal deadness, Mark did what millions of high-performing professionals do: he automated his life. He developed rigid routines. Every morning was a perfectly optimized sequence of espresso, meditation apps, journaling, and high-intensity workouts. He thought that if he followed the success blueprint perfectly, the emptiness would go away. He was using productivity to cure the sickness caused by productivity. He didn't realize that his anxiety had mutated. It was no longer a loud voice telling him he wasn't good enough. It had become a quiet, systematic anesthesia. His mind had realized that the pain of never being satisfied was too great, so it simply turned down the volume on all emotions. He couldn't feel deep sadness, but he could no longer feel joy either. He was safely numb. Until that rainy Tuesday night, when the $10 million contract failed to wake him up. As Mark sat in his dark office, he stood up and walked to the window. He looked at his reflection in the glass. He didn't recognize the man staring back at him. The eyes were exhausted, hollow, and detached. He realized that if he died right there at his desk, his company would replace him within a week. His clients would find another architect. His loft would be sold to another high earner. The life he had built was a masterpiece, but the frame was empty. Mark slowly walked back to his desk. His laptop was still open, the screen glowing in the dark room. The cursor was blinking, waiting for him to open the next file, to start the next project, to plan the next quarter. Normally, this was the moment Mark would dive into the next task. He would suppress the emptiness by feeding the machine more work. But tonight, something inside him snapped. It wasn't a violent explosion like Sarah's. It was a cold, quiet mutiny. He reached out his hand, placed his fingers on the trackpad, and moved the cursor to the top left corner of the screen. He clicked the shutdown button. The screen faded to black. He took his expensive leather briefcase, left it on the chair, and walked out of the office. He didn't take his work phone. He left it face down on the desk, buzzing silently with incoming congratulatory emails. He didn't know it yet, but Mark had just entered the first stage of what psychologists call the Great Awakening, the brutal, terrifying moment when a high performer decides to stop running on the wheel. But what happens when a machine stops working? How do you rebuild a life when you realize that your entire identity was built on a lie? In the second part of Mark's story, we are going to look at the chaotic aftermath of his choice. We will examine the terrifying withdrawal symptoms of leaving the hustle culture, the anger of his peers, and the painful process of discovering who you are when you are no longer successful. If you have ever felt the weight of the ambition trap, or if you are currently running on a wheel that feels empty, stay with us. The path out of the trap is dangerous, but it is the only path back to life. Make sure you are subscribed to Hearts and Minds Lab so you don't miss part 2, where we uncover how Mark found his way back from the dead. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt this emptiness? Let's decode it together. Good night.